So, hi everybody. I think that one of the dilemmas that we have is that you may or may not know that the Crown Center is opening a little bit more. One of the things that is really hard to remember, that all of these centers work together. They do not work separately. And when we're learning things from books and all, it seems as if the implication is that they work separately, and there's an engagement as if separate. And that is a false premise. Any center that opens even just a small bit, and of course, I think I have to mention at the same time that each and every one of us, as we become more consciously aware, begin to be aware of the idea as a practical experience that if one center opens more than we normally perceive it in a particular state, then all other centers are affected. So, what happens is everyone is involved with a balance. The balance is an indescribable balance. Really, basically, there's a way of seeing your personality that you have within yourselves that is not as conscious as you believe it is. It's tremendously unconscious. And the most interesting thing about that is that we still believe 100% in what we perceive, even if we're looking at about 7 or 8% conscious. 30% conscious, whatever it may be. None of that is negative. It's just some of the cycles that we go through in understanding the ultimate length and breadth of a capacity of an individual to grow. We always perceive that capacity from the downside. Unfortunately, that is too bad because it's not real. It's a premise that relates to protecting how you perceive yourself. This is natural. It's normal. Not as a criticism. We all do it. So here's a kind of an example. The energy opens in the Crown Center just a little bit. Every other center that is open to the Crown Center, even if it's not as big as a horse's hair, is affected. Meaning your so-called version of balance is going to be off. You'll have stronger emotional dispositional reactions. You will see things within your purview, personality's way of seeing things, differently. You need time to re-understand. You need time to adjust perceiving from your own personalized point of view and moving that into a place where you can say, I wonder how the other person is experiencing this. And they may not be experiencing anything, but you believe you are understanding everything that they are involved with, and you are not. And they are not. Both of those things are true. So, allowing yourself to become a little bit more gentle with how you engage with others, how you perceive others engaging with you, is a stalwart in the process of internal growth. If you do not do that, the intensification or the increase in flow will show you that you are intensifying even more than what you believe you are, and it will not be comfortable. Now, having said that, it is natural and normal also to regain a new position internally after a few weeks, months, whatever it is for you, depending on how much you defend the position you're already in, which is a natural thing, a natural event as well, you will begin to notice that you are seeing life slightly differently, and you will quickly run to hide that because it is out of whack with the previous balance. In the initial stages of real internal growth, this is a true occurrence. This occurrence is an occurrence that is consistent all through any level of growth. But later on, you begin to realize that you've seen this kind of cycle before, or engagement of movement through growth previously. You're very lucky if you had this happen 3 or 4 or 5 times in one lifetime, because by about the third, you're starting to sniff it out just a little bit. And you're saying, whoa, just a minute here. I remember that happening before. You won't quite initially get it consciously, but you'll have a reflex internally that says, I've had that happen before. You still won't be happy with it, because happiness is only the way you believe you were previously to that 1 second when more energy started to come into you. This is normal, but this is also honest. I love, I like Patanjali's recording of most interesting thing. He starts with the ultimate first, the big enchilada, and says, you will become able. I love that, because the truth is, we start that way, and we say, right at the first, we are really able. Somewhere in the middle of that, at least a third in, you start to get a little bit more conscious of what's going on. The first third to 2/3 is all preparation. It's no joke. Preparation is a powerful thing to say, because you're being prepared for movement past what you would like to perceive as true, into a state where you are watching what's occurring and understanding that it's slightly different than what you believe or how you believe things should be in a process of growth. This is most wonderful. You are so fortunate. There is nothing that could be better than that. If you're consciously aware of it, you could actually allow yourself to say, okay, this is my first initial reaction. This is how I see the world. That's interesting, because that's consistent with how I see the world. I have seen the world. Second step is, my goodness, I see the world this way, and it's uncomfortable. But there's more. I'm seeing more than I normally see, and it's not my fault, it's everybody else's. I love that statement, because that's how it feels. Anyone in here ever had that feeling? Every head moves up and down. I like that movement up and down, and I can't remember the name. Is it the Muppets or something like this that used to have their heads move up and down like this? Muppets, sorry. Apologize about that. My 50-year-old children would know that better than I do. So the issue in relationship to this is that you are shaping a new reality with the old reality. How's that sound? You're shaping a new reality with the old reality, insisting that the new reality should be just better and more able than you are now, but all along the same line. And Patanjali says, no. I'm inclined to agree with him, but it just depends on whether you're 1/3 in or 2/3 into this preparation stage, where actually you can look and see at least a number of things that you know are consistent for you. You know it because it's there and you've been watching it. The second thing is, you're not objectifying an ideal. In other words, you are not saying this is right and that's wrong. You're looking at it and saying, so this is what I do. Okay, all right. I'm not too pleased with that, but nonetheless, I'll watch and see if this really is the way. Okay, this is what I do finally. And now let me try and do it just a speck differently, not very much. Because you will delude yourself into thinking you have changed everything. I changed that in 1979, and then again in 1992 and 99, and you missed all the years where it was the same. It doesn't sound very fruitful, and it doesn't sound very interesting, because everybody knows that once you change something, you will never go there again. Oh, head's moving. Here's side saddling. Okay, side saddling is good, in my opinion, because you are becoming conscious of the fact that it's okay, but not necessarily agreed with on your part. You have repeated things, and you make a solemn wish, except when you don't want to adjust some of that stuff, maybe if you have a chance to. But at the same time, other people should adjust all their stuff before you do. I find that very fascinating, because only spouses and people close to you should do that. The rest of them, you really don't care anyway. Sorry, I shouldn't say that out loud. But you really are looking at your projections, your engagement with how you function, and the outside world is displaying something in a symbolic language, not a negative language, symbolic language. The language of this: energy is projected outward. Simultaneously, energy is projected inward. Perception itself is looking from the point of view of images that have been in your past. You even have to root out a change. It's funny how I said root out a change. Well, the root center is very, very, very clear. No change should occur until I'm ready. And I'll never be ready, because I want nothing to change except me to get more able. That is a natural tendency in most children of the higher planes. The dilemma is that we forget that we're children of the higher planes as opposed to all grown-up beings of consciousness, and we already are in a higher plane. Even people who are truly enabled and quite capable of engaging at a higher level forget this one issue. That does not mean that you are high beings in perfect working order, full preparation, finished. It means that you are susceptible to perceiving deeper until you can watch yourself in action, not necessarily agree with you, and then slowly soften that element down that you don't agree with so that energy can move through it into the world of consciousness through that element that you cannot handle well because you have learned to handle it better. And you then can affect the whole continuum of consciousness in those that cannot handle that area, but you can a little bit better than you stubbornly refused to before. That stubbornness is going to come in so handy. That will to engage is going to come in so handy. As it turns the corner internally, it will be a will to enable in just a small place within you energy to come in, more energy to come in, so that you can also transmit the aspect that you have brought to bear on helping you, and that will help others because it will be transmitted to others. And often what will occur is something like this. As an example, they will be engaging, having forgotten how they've adjusted their relationship a little bit, and suddenly and they may not know that they need to adjust or care to adjust anything, but suddenly they will do something about 90 degrees different or 30 degrees different, 60 degrees different than they could have ever done before. And energy itself will bring that to its perception. It will be a conscious little eureka moment. And in that one particular moment, there will be an effect on the natural reflex that has been stimulated by an interaction with life, of course, through life experience and through training. It will have an effect on that, and it will show up not only in that one place, but in other places within the personal. Because the personality is being trained to be able to handle higher levels of consciousness, provided you keep in mind that the personality is nothing but an interaction of forces coming from the physical plane, the emotional plane, and the mental plane, literally coming together to coordinate and engage with others who have also coordinated and engaged their life, through their life, a form called personality. We call it that, and people want to annihilate this. That isn't what the sages meant. What the sages really meant by this is this. As a fusion of the higher planes and the lower planes come together, there is a shift in how the lower planes perceive the relationship that the lower planes have with life. Did you hear that? There is a shift in how the lower plane personality orientations see how these lower planes engage with life. Think about that for a second. You perceive life through you. Stop there. You believe what you perceive is exactly right. You perceive only a small aspect of how life is, believing you perceive it 100% or close to how it is. It is not how you perceive it. It has kind of a little bit of similarity, but it is not exactly the way it is. If you had a broader perspective, you would perceive it slightly differently, even broader, differently. You would even be wondering why the individual is choosing those words as opposed to some other words. You would even consider watching the internalizations of yourself and perhaps being able to perceive the internalizations of the others. You would realize that they are increasing their internalizations because you have increased yours. They are matching them. Unconsciously, usually never a conscious way to do it, except if they are listening to the tones reflexively that you are using when you engage with them. You cannot hide from this. You are energy beings. You are engaging energetically with others consistently. There's a multitude of frequencies that you are using unconsciously. You believe that those tones and reference points and energies used the way they are exactly the right way to do this, and they are not. But it's a part of the process that you use to engage with others. It is not negative and not conceived or perceived of as negative. It influences you and how you engage with what others are doing, how you make sense of these things. You tell a story that relates to making sense for you about your life experience. It's normal. We do this so that we can remember things with great clarity. Even when you're learning how to memorize things, you make up stories and engage with the story and put pieces to remember on that story. This is a worldwide known way of using memory better. But we have reflexive methods. You have a belief that your personality is very much in a particular way, and it is not. It's huger, larger, more elegant, more refined, coarser, based on assessment processes, but very refined in methodology. And we cannot perceive as well yet the underlying intensities that are expressed. This does not devalue your personality, but it does mean that your personality is in a process of development, and you use a number of features to mask unknowingly that developmental stage. This is natural and normal. Otherwise, you would be caught up in whose is better than somebody else's, because the process of competition has been used for the one very wondrous idea of trying to get you to move beyond where you were. When you're in a team of sports, it seems to work. When you're in business, when there's a winner versus you, blah, 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 all that seems to work for whoever is the winner. But in fact, it doesn't help you to understand that this is reminiscent only of kids in a sandbox, fighting over the grains of sand that they have at their disposal. In their pockets, in their clothes, in their mouth, their hands, whatever. I have more grains of sand than you know. And this is a consistent thing. The element that is missing in relationship to growth, and this subsequently is valuable in understanding intensity, is to find a balance in the personality so that we understand, no matter what, that each and every person on the planet is growing. There is no doubt about that at all. Even if they're miserable, you try and get them to be less miserable and see what they will say. They are aligned with what they believe is true, as opposed to what might be true. They are sensing those things and bringing those sensory elasticity points that they're used to using into every foray that relates to an engagement with others or themselves. This is very difficult to deal with internally for them. No one should denigrate that, ever, because that's a degree of difficulty of handling energy and using it in the same way over and over and over again, making it really harder to shift and change. Because there is a tremendous degree of vulnerability. If this is shifted, terrible degree of vulnerability occurs. The person thinks that they're going to change so much they won't be able to survive. This is very difficult. This stuff is very difficult. Some of the sages had terrible trouble with this. So they used to go off into a cave and stay there for years. But they would be acting out in a way that related to other sages who had gone and the stories they'd heard and an engagement that occurs. Unless all of a sudden they realized that there were tremendous forces at play. And they were not doing well in this particular thing, meaning they are not remaining the same way as their personality was before. They're shifting and changing. This is a tremendous thing. Wonderful. Terrific. I remember being in a cave myself and with a friend, and we were meditating there for about an hour and a half. And my friend says, "Ron, I can't stay any longer. It's just impossible. Do you see all those faces?" I said, "Yeah, they're everywhere." Every being who had ever been in there had left their astral shells in there. And they were scary. They would come, And that should scare everybody out there. I apologize about that, but here it comes again. Whatever that would be. And it was just too hard to handle because the emotion of the astral shell, the same as the personalities that you believe you need to be, the emotion of that is in the astral plane. The emotion in those caves, if they haven't been calmed down, are still in the caves. And if you're a slight bit clairvoyant and it throws you into clairvoyance because it throws you out of yourself. And you see these forms and they are moving all over the place. This is crazy making. Don't listen to it if you don't want to. And all of a sudden you begin to realize that the astral plane is filled with ideas, responses, reactions around you that are circulating around you that validate any kind of engagement that you have with others or with yourself that aligns with how you believe you are. Isn't that fascinating? I hit upon this idea back in the 80s and I thought, you know what? If that is true that these things are circling, then maybe I can use a searchlight to ask for help. Hopefully I can remember this. So my searchlight was creating a vortex with my hands, turning my hands on, and pointing at when I felt energy really strong here, I might point out there. Not knowing or knowing where it was, I would ask for help and healing for that particular astral structure related to something within the individual psyche. The dilemma with this, as you grow, your belief system, whatever it may be, shifts your sight. You cannot see well. You use the belief to think that you are more able so that you fog out where the help is coming. That higher level will help you to notice the difficulty that you have with a certain frequency at a certain level. It will be wondrous. It is a wondrous gift. You can use energy, asking for it to come through you, into you for that purpose, the purpose of you being helped. Or you can believe, and belief is powerful, negatively or positively. Powerful in that it will fog out your ability to allow yourself to perceive that which is in you, and you will direct it in a direction related to others. Because remember, you're still transmitting that. Know it or not. Fog it out or not. And you will think, this is how spiritual growth is. And I've reached and attained this level, so it must be their fault. The same is done, and that's a competition. It's a syndrome. There is a great need to be the best. No offense, Barney. And the relationship, names are just names, right? But the relationship with this is, the dilemma is it stops the sight. You cannot perceive that because it's too hurtful to perceive what's there because you judge it immediately. If you look at it and don't judge it, you can say, wow, I never knew that was there. And now you might be helpful to yourself. You're not trying to be perfect. The personality is not a perfecting form. It's a form that occurs here for the pulling of that higher plane into these planes. It's an act of creation. But you got to take a look at this. Yeah, the belief is not necessarily there. But you got to remember also, life itself and everything that's formed is an aspect of that universal flow. And what you're doing is aspiring to have that level conscious of itself, even through you, as a form through which energy can pass. and you are conscious of it. So you will come up with all kinds of trinkets, all kinds of ideas, and you will engage with these things. I remember in the early days that this inner voice of mine said, you be careful now. You'll be interested in old things. And I am. They were exactly right. Like to see how the old systems work, the old sages work. I'm fascinated by the capacity that people have on this planet, and we are on the main totally unable to perceive those with that ability, who have energy operating through them for the higher level purpose. You see, the lower level is filled with universal flow. The higher levels are filled with universal flow. But the perspective and the direction is slightly different. Higher level flow is trying to help everybody. Our engagement, we're still involved with the ancient idea of if I can get to the top of the hill first, I'm more important than everybody else. And I have that spear in my hand, and I'll get those guys as they're coming up. It may not be quite that bad, but you can get the metaphor. Is it negative? I never liked to be beaten when I was running a 100-yard dash. So that's part of my training. What's part of your training? Do you like to win a discussion, argument? Or do you like to be second? There's no such thing as second for me. I think there is a second. As a matter of fact, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 in the room. So you look at it this way. Each and every one of you, out of nowhere, can have an idea go through your mental structure, never being there before. If you speak it out, everyone can learn from that. Well, we don't think that way. But you don't understand. You didn't have that idea before. That's not from you. That comes from your sensor, your mental sensor, called the brain thing. And idea went through from the mind plane, universal in itself. And you noticed it. Quickly, you're trained to speak out first before somebody else does. That means you're smarter. It doesn't mean you're smarter. It just means you spoke something out. No, you don't understand, Ron. You're right, I don't understand. Your relationship with a form is profound because it is an aspect of that universal flow. At a level that isn't as conscious as it will become through time and through development. I don't care who you are. Somebody out with a rifle shooting for all the wrong reasons are doing the same thing. They're a little kid playing with shovels. They shouldn't have a shovel. But in our world, you can buy shovels at every hardware store. So take that as an analogy. Everybody has a right as long as they win. I don't think so. But that's how we think. That's how we're taught. As long as you're the good guys, you're okay. And if you're the bad guys, you're bad. I think that's probably true for all of us. We think that way. Nothing negative there. It's actually profound if you can put it around your head and begin to realize how difficult it is to engage with life from a perspective that relates to a higher level. From a higher level, all of us here, most often, are young, coarser, and we have a capacity to move from coarseness to elegance, at least within a boundary related to the planet. Included in that boundary, this is exciting for me, is the ability of each and every individual on the planet, because they're part of the astral plane, because they're part of the mental plane, they're part of the physical plane, to engage in a way that might be helpful as a stream with information occurs relative to others, unknown or known to us, be helpful to adjust the form, physically or emotionally, or mentally, because remember, that's projected into those planes around the planet. And we can engage with that and learn from those places. Take it from this point of view. Maybe it's a little easier, I don't know. You have a whole lot of avatars that have come here. Well, you can name probably 4 or 5 that you have belief in, or at least you know others have belief in some and you have belief in these others. These beings were physical. Yeah? Emotional? Yep. Mental? Yep. Their structures, and they're not around perhaps, their structures are still in an aspect internally, within that astral plane, mental and physical plane. They are there, and they're oscillating. They no longer need to engage here, perhaps, and they'll leave that. But that oscillation is still there for you to reach up into, and if you get even similar in a sensing mode, the flow will link. Now, it's not the individual kind of, but it's the flow itself that was there, related to higher planes that will actually help you. Because some people really truly believe that that is the only way they can grow, that would be exceedingly helpful to them. Even for people who don't believe that, it would be helpful. Why? Any idea? Because it oscillates forever. If you have 150 new avatars that come in and never, ever let you know who they are, what happens is the oscillation is alive right now. What about that astral plane? Is it alive right now? It's alive right now. What about the so-called mental plane of Buddha? It's alive right now. Krishna, it's alive right now. Any others who have ever engaged mystically, because kind of a way they were all mystical, whatever you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want. Reaching higher levels. You can call that occult or secret or whatever you want to call it. Those vibrations are alive right now. It's a shell. You move through the shell. This is a shell. You move through, you leave it behind. It's a shell. You leave it behind, it goes into the ground. But the physical astral level, etheric level, still glows. If you had a little bit of awareness, you should go to the tombs of Sri Aurobindo or the tombs of a number of people that I can't even think of right now, in India or wherever they are, and the astral shell is still there. But it's physical. And it's vibrating. And you can perceive the vibration off 8 to 10 feet. Or if you can't perceive very well, even closer. And if you can't perceive that, you can lean on belief. It will help you. You can reach out mentally, you can reach out emotionally, you can reach out physically with this form in your imagination. And you will have a touch of that vibration, which will help you in areas, for example, that are legitimate. Go watch a movie. He's made many of them. Krishnamurti made a number of them. If you have trouble with your throat center, go listen to that movie. Go watch it. the being was profoundly able at that level. And it was working right up to the top of his head. He had energy coming in, beings coming into higher levels coming in to help him, to be helpful to others. This is really valuable. Preparation. He understood what preparation was. Others understood what preparation was. The form is at the disposal of higher levels. This is preparation, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental, or personality-oriented, speaking through a physical form, emotional and mental intense form. Is this making any sense to anybody? Okay. This is of, how we do? Yeah. This is of great value when you're looking at increased intensity. Let's take it back to where we were before. Energy comes in. It disturbs the quo, the status quo. and you can hear it because the emotion gets stronger in you. The quickness of so-called mind gets really strong, but it's attached to the tongue and its relationship with the personality, and it wants to get out there and just, it's not my fault and I'm really uptight. It's somebody else's right now. No. I used to like Karl Marx, not Karl Marx, the Marx Brothers. Yeah. And he used to go with his cigar. Groucho. Unbelievable. What a metaphor. Except we don't use cigars, we just use, and we don't use hands, we use lips, and the brain is not connected to it. The emotion is. Out you go. Can't slow it down enough to say, this is really, why would I do that? Because the intensity of the emotional disposition has been touched by an opening in the crown center or the brow center or the throat center, and you have to wait a few days, months, years. In the old days, they used to say, don't worry, 3 more lifetimes, that's all you've got. To be able to work out this semi-refinement. And this was looked upon as a wondrous gift by people who knew they had thousands of lifetimes. But we don't talk about that like, no, this is a Western world, and we can't really believe in stuff that we don't know for sure. Basically, we just believe in what we think we know. Too bad. But it's all right to be that way. It's all right to be a different way. So learning how to be respectful to that energy. When you see the symptoms, everybody hear the symptoms part? Symptoms are a little stiff in the body. Emotions are a little hyper or intense. You notice that you're a little quick in the tongue and pretty flexible in the jaw. And then you notice ideas are going through your mind for the benefit of protection of how you think things are based on what you want to think things are, and that protects you. That is honestly normal. What's not normal is say, whoa, energy must be a little stronger. I seem to be a little bit more intensified. Wow, okay, I got it. Let me sit back here and try to relax a bit. and just because I know that if I don't relax, I'll be intensely emitting tremendous sharing with everyone. And that's okay, but they'll be sharing back intensity, and that's not okay. Although, if it's all their fault, then it's okay. I can make a case for that. It will be fine. And the only problem is that it won't be refined. It will be something that will engage with tremendously strong cycles of needing to do that to justify how you function. And you are doing that to you, and that's not comfortable. but it is not insurmountable. It is wondrous that that is occurring, because if it is, it means you are having more flow coming into you. Wow. Isn't that what you want? As a being developing and growing? If it would only come in perfectly the way you are now and make you exactly the same way, but better. So you could say, that's me, I'm now spiritual. That would be quite interesting. Very fascinating, as a matter of fact. Because your range of being God has dropped quite a few decibels. And that's only in tones. But tones are frequencies, so I guess maybe it makes some sense. I always like the idea, it's a good reminder, that if there is such an infinite frequency, that everything, no exceptions, in the universe is perceived, recognized, understood, patience, recognizes levels of growth in all areas, if there is such a level of tremendous flow, then growth means you're moving in that direction, fighting like crazy to remain the same as you are, just more able to ferret out everybody else's stuff with great wondrousness. So you'll be recognized by everybody as the only person who can ferret that stuff out. Such a waste of time. Such a waste of time. Not real. But interesting. How many people would like to be the only one in the universe that is God, who can figure out everything and then come down with a hammer? God, no. Because this is what we were taught originally. There's a guy with a hammer. You better be good. The person who carries this hammer is you. Burn it. In mind, in consciousness, in emotion. Let it go. If you use it, you hurt you. Nobody else. Invariably, other people let everything go that isn't them. And so will you, eventually. But it's not worth hammering people. It hurts you. It's not worth hammering you either. You are a precious, energetic form. And I don't care who you are. You are the most precious thing that can exist. And the Buddhists think the reason why you should think it's precious is it's hard to become a human being. I don't necessarily only agree with that, but they do. They believe it's very difficult to become a human being, on whatever level. And I don't think there's an animal that I would rather be other than a human being, unless there are other forms beyond this form. I might consider that, if it's got a purpose. If it's got a purpose that might be helpful. I know it's not 8 o'clock, but unless anybody here has some questions about that. Anybody have questions about this one? Yes.
I have a question, but it's not related to what you're
talking about. Okay, just go for it.
It relates to the throat center,
mm-hmm.
and I find myself in meditation and also during class more than any other time in my life. I want to put my hand over my throat,
mm-hmm.
or at my throat, or around here. I'll be
mm-hmm.
meditating and I want to put my hands up here.
Yeah.
And when I'm listening to you talk, I want to be warm,
mm-hmm.
but also put my hand here in
mm-hmm.
front of my throat.
Yeah.
What's that about?
It's about the gonad center and the solar plexus. You should be able to feel the solar plexus really strong.
Mm-hmm.
The gonad center and the root centers are tied together, and they are, I have to be honest about this, they are kind of being helped by your hands to come upward, because they do not want to get out of that position. I've just been talking about this kind of thing. It is natural for that to happen. As a matter of fact, it's really uncomfortable if it does happen, because the solar plexus is bubbling and bursting out, it's pushing out. You can feel the pressure moving out like this. And it is coming up and doesn't, but it has got two little streams, and it doesn't want to reach out. So you're putting your hands there reflexively, because wherever you're open through the system, wherever you're open through the system, you're open in your hands. Which means wherever your hands are open, you begin to be open through the system. Fair enough? So, because they interact together. So, what you're trying now, it's just been a shift. You should be able to feel that in your chest a bit more, but still really strong here in the solar plexus. So, the throat, if you bring your will up to here, the throat wants to do the same thing as the root and gonad center does. Wants to be in charge of everything. This is not a devaluation. This is a really important thing as you grow. You must remember that you are training to be consciously aware, not unconscious. If you're unconscious, then you don't have to worry about anything and fall asleep. You don't have to see anything and fall asleep. You don't have to really understand that it's a to and fro engagement with life, related to energy forms that are in a movement towards learning how to hold and help each other. This wants to be on its own here, because its fear is basically survival oriented. Its fear is basically, the gonad center, root center, its fear is basically survival oriented. In our world, there is a spiritual orientation which implies that to grow is to mean you become more willful and you take charge of everything, because you are the boss. False premise. It's exactly opposite, but you are extremely conscious, not bossy. But you can be bossy as a personality if you understand that. But that begins to train, so it's a training process. So you are supporting comfort here when you put your hands around your neck. Everybody try that. Just softly, thumbs underneath, here, right there, and fold over softly, as if you are just really softening and gentling. And you can ask for help for that. Put your little fingers along the clavicle, and you can feel that, those clavicles. Okay? Everybody get that? Thumbs underneath the chin. Little fingers on the clavicles. Ever so gentle with the fingers. Just asking for help. Fair enough. Better?
It's very comforting.
Yeah, it is. But also energy is moving there too. That's the thing to remember. Still, the solar plexus is really heavy. When you talk about this stuff, when we talk about this stuff, it's as if it sounds as if we're all bad. Everyone understand this? You're bad if you're not this way or that way. This is all training. It has nothing to do with good and bad. It has everything to do with piece by piece, little by little, and your experience is broader as opposed to coarser. The coarser is still there in your emotional memory, mental memory, physical memory. So the coarseness becomes not only your version of for you, but the understanding of others through that. You say, oh my goodness, they're similar to that. That was tough. Now I understand how difficult that is for them. So you get a deeper level engagement The throat helps the brow. If you could really perceive when your hands are right here, thumbs along here, first thing that happens is opens the sides of your head, moves right to your brow, cuts along the edges of your crown center, and literally you're becoming more aware. Because it's trying to help you. But you have to soften down between the shoulder blades. Like this doesn't work too well. She was not doing that, just so that, but I'm just saying it doesn't work too well. The softening is really helpful. The more you practice intensity, the more intensity is focused on. More intensity you get. Does everybody understand that? So the softer you are, the more energy can go into that place, the softer place. So you're trying to learn, and you're mixing the intensity with the softer frequency. All right? Has to balance out. And that, there and again, I'm repeating myself, but the balancing out aspect is trying to get a conscious understanding of the intensity that can flow through you. It's wondrous that intensity can flow through you and you're still healthy. Now, that means you have tremendous potential if you soften down. It is tremendous because that can soften down literally, and your understanding could go deeper if you let it. Your understanding of others, yourself, and how the world functions, and how much you can help. Because you help through all levels, from the more refined right through into the coarser levels. You help through all of those levels. That's you as a being of consciousness. A light is here. It sprays out 360 degrees. Everybody understands that. It's a light. Light like this. However, if it only sprays out in about 28 degrees and says that's all the light there is, that's a problem. Not a problem if you're in the middle of that 28 degrees. You believe that's all there is. When it goes like this, it's different. But you cannot look at this as if it's 28 degrees. Otherwise, there will be tremendous intensity to deal with. You have to soften the 28 degrees so you can be okay with the 360. And that's a movement. Fair enough? So if you are preparing to have more energy pass through you for a more softer purpose, you have to calm down those that are used to going in an intense manner to validate a house like this, personality house. And when you soften down, more energy can go through the personality house as an energy form, because it's not itself protecting itself the same way as it was. That's all. So it softens and more energy can go through it, and the conscious awarer, if there's such a thing, the seer, can watch it going through as opposed to holding it and keeping it in the same place. Right? But you are learning how to become a little bit more consciously aware until you can watch it going through and still just be a watcher as opposed to a great person having it happen. Because you are not the one that's engaging personally. Can you? You can learn, you can train to engage specifically, but who would teach you how to do that if you could hurt somebody? Fair enough? Unconsciously, reflexively, tremendous intensity can be transmitted and you can hurt somebody. So you're learning slowly but respectfully to soften down the form so you can have more energy go to it so it can stretch out a bit, and you're the trainer. You're training it to be softer And it every now and then will just come in a cloud of force because it doesn't want to be softer past a certain point, because if it is, there's no return to a perfect position of hard. There's no return. There's various positions of coarser, but it doesn't return from your perspective to the same place. So we are all involved with this kind of thing. To the point where subtle energy can move through into a coarser area and make the coarser area more subtle, but perceivable by us and respected by us because of the process of growth and the great need that there is on the planet to be helped even in coarser areas. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much for being patient and willing to listen to me for about an hour or so. And I wish you all well in your particular spiritual development. Good night.